Hi guys, my name is Chelsea Spence and this is my introduction video that includes part 1 and part 2 of our Module 1 assignment. So let's get started. Alright, a little bit about me. I'm currently a 3rd grade teacher at New Holland Elementary, which is in the Garden Spot School District, also known as Elanco. This will be my 4th year teaching. I spent 2 years teaching 4th grade and then I made the switch to 3rd grade and I absolutely love it. And I'm happy to say that this is my very last class in completing my master's program in technology and innovation. And along the way, I decided to pick up a STEM endorsement because in the program I was introduced to STEM and I just kind of fell in love with it and wanted to get as much exposure as I could. So that's sort of why I chose this class. I just recently bought a house in Lancaster City, so that's kind of something new in my life. And as far as my hobbies, I enjoy outdoors activities. I like to do things like hiking, kayaking, biking, running, things of that nature. And I also really love to travel. Last week I just got back from a 3-week-long vacation where I spent time in London, France, and Croatia. And so just for fun, I put in 2 pictures from my trip. This is the town that I stayed in Croatia. It's called Split. Very beautiful. I highly recommend it. And while in Croatia, one of the excursions that I went on landed me in the famous Blue Cave. And just a fun fact, if you're curious, where'd my mouse go? The water is actually that bright blue color because you can kind of see here there's an underwater entrance where where the light is able to travel through and it lights the water up, so it's really pretty. And if I had to choose a favorite cartoon character, I think I'd choose Fred Flintstone. I've always been a big fan. And moving into part 2, what is your operational definition of STEM? Before I read the chapters or watched any of the videos that were assigned to us, I wrote down my definition of STEM at that point in time, and that's the very first bulletin point there. I said it was an approach to teaching that incorporates science, technology, engineering, and math through hands-on activities that offer real-world application. One of the reasons that I fell in love with STEM was because I thought it was really engaging for students, and it also really helps to foster a growth mindset, which is something that I've spent the past year or 2 focusing on. And I loved that the video that we were asked to watch, that I had quoted there, they state that the STEM disciplines are vital for a thriving economy and a safe and happy society. I thought that was a really great quote that kind of highlighted the why of STEM. Our textbook defines STEM as an interdisciplinary approach to learning that removes traditional barriers separating the 4 disciplines and integrates them into real-world, rigorous, and relevant learning experiences for students. So I felt like that kind of encompassed what my original definition was, but I really love in that quote the phrase there that it removes the traditional barriers separating the 4 disciplines. I think that's a really great phrase that does a great job of explaining STEM. In our textbook, they also do a good job of defining sort of the goal of STEM education, which I thought was pretty important to highlight. And I have that quote there. It says that the goal is for students to be able to function and thrive in our highly technological world. That is, to be STEM literate. So how have I incorporated STEM in my classroom? I have several activities that I have incorporated in my classroom. And I sort of just went with the one that I had a few pictures left on my phone from, but I'm going to mention 2 others that are 2 of my favorites. But the activity that you see there is an activity that I use as sort of just an introduction to the design process and the design log template that I use pretty much throughout the entire school year. Students were challenged to design a tower completely made out of only index cards and masking tape. And the purpose of their tower was to give their friend Jack a tower that he could climb and stand at the top of to take aerial photos. Their tower had to be at least 10 inches tall, and it had to be able to support the weight of at least 4 peeps. In these pictures I used peeps because it was the first time I did the activity and it was in the middle of the school year around Easter, so who doesn't love peeps? Students absolutely love this activity, and it really did a great job of walking them through the design process and getting them familiar with the design log template that I use. So I think it's a really great kind of simple activity to start with, just to get them familiar. And on the left here, you can see, I did not come up with this activity. I borrowed it from the resource, where'd my mouse go? Engineering Adventures. So if you haven't checked that out, just Google Engineering Adventures, and it's a really great resource where you can find tons of STEM activities. So when introducing the activity, students are given 3 possible methods they can use for building their tower. They can roll it, they can fold it into triangles like this, or they can make little slits with scissors and sort of stack them like that, or they can come up with their own method. But that just kind of gives them a foundation to work from, so they're not completely lost, and it's just really interesting to see their thought process as they work through it. And something that I sort of noticed after the couple times I've done it is that a lot of times students don't go with the traditional methods. They want to come up with their own, and you can see in the picture there, those students didn't really use either of those 3 methods. So they want to be creative and they want to kind of come up with their own idea. So that's the activity I'm going to focus on moving into the next question, but just 2 activities I wanted to mention that I really, really love and suggest. You can find them on Teacher Pay Teachers. I didn't come up with them. I found them on there, but just quick general descriptions. STEM a Nest is something I do in the beginning of the school year, where I actually collected a couple of birds' nests that have fallen out of trees, and I put them in plastic containers so students aren't getting germs. But they take a look at those nests, and then we go outside and they collect their own materials, and they are challenged to design their own birds' nests. I love that activity. Students love it. Highly suggest it. And another activity that I love is similar, called STEM a Beak. And what I do is I set up different stations around the classroom, and each station has sort of a scenario that represents a different food source for a different type of bird. And students walk around, sort of check out each scenario, and they use basic STEM materials to design a beak that will best capture that specific food source. So it kind of is a great activity to introduce adaptations. All right, so taking a look at the index tower activity that I spoke about, and looking at the STEM practices as listed in our textbook. I circled 1 in each of the disciplines, but I kind of feel like most STEM activities touch on more than 1. But just to keep it brief, we'll kind of go through here. So looking at science, asking questions, sort of the question that I think students ask themselves is, what technique will offer the most support? Whether that's one of the 3 techniques that are shown to them, or if they're going to come up with their own. In engineering, defining the problem. In fact, in my design log, one of the first things that students need to do is to restate the problem in their own words. And so I have there that Jack needs a tower he can climb that will support his weight and stand at least 10 inches tall so he can take aerial photos. In technology, I circled there becoming aware of the web of technological systems on which society depends. That activity leads into a great discussion about what the word technology really means. And so we sort of discuss that they're building a technology. The tower is a type of technology. It's designed for a purpose, and that kind of helps us to jump into other structures and how they are designed for different purposes. And in mathematics, there I have circled make sense of problems and persevere in solving them. So kind of the main problem in this activity is that different geometric shapes offer support for different weights. And again, they have to decide which one they feel is going to be best for their tower to help it stand 10 inches tall and to be able to support the weight. All right, and why is STEM education important? I think that the National Academy's video does a great job of emphasizing that STEM is so important because of our current societal needs. And a large portion of those needs falls into the categories that I've listed there: food, energy, climate, and health. We are helping to prepare students to be able to critically think and to be problem solvers so that they can help in those big areas where our society needs. I think that Neil deGrasse did a great job of stating it perfectly, that innovations and creativity in STEM will be the drivers of tomorrow's economy. And if you're not a participant on that frontier, then you will trail behind it. I think that quote really highlights the importance of STEM education. And sort of taking a look at our textbook, I think chapter 5 is where it lists all the different practices that we just kind of went through with my last activity. And it gives a brief description of why each of those individual practices is so important. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I just picked out one that I thought was really important. Well, they're all really important, but I picked out one that stood out to me, which is one of the science and engineering practices. It's practice number 7, engage in argument from evidence. And our textbook says that in science, reasoning and argument are essential for finding the best explanation for a natural phenomenon. And in engineering, reasoning and argument are used to defend the best possible solution to a problem. Engineers use systematic methods to compare alternative solutions, trading off one feature for another to optimize solutions. So again, that's just one practice in one of the disciplines, but all of those practices that we just went through on that chart, I feel like are very, very crucial to prepare students for the world that we now live in. And finally, what are your goals for the course? As I said, I'd already been introduced to STEM, but the reason I signed up for this course is because I'd really like to find and create more STEM activities that I can use in my classroom. I have a couple that I love and for the past few years I've implemented, but I'd like to expand that. And also, my school district just recently switched to a hybrid model approach. And so in this class, I kind of hope to sort of reflect and sort of figure out how some of these STEM activities will look in a hybrid model approach. So yeah, that's about it. So thanks for listening.